And it's my pleasure now to welcome back currently Grand Chief Abram Benedict, who has recently been chosen to represent on the provincial stage as Ontario Regional Chief. First of all, congratulations, Chief, and welcome back to the show.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, well, it's wonderful to have you here, and it's always wonderful to see, from our region, such great representation on a high level. So let's talk about that first of all. So we recently had the opportunity to talk about your career with the MCA, but then it was time for a new chapter, time for a new challenge, and you decided to put your name forward for Ontario Regional Chief. Let's talk about that decision first of all.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I've been the Grand Chief for my community for 9 years, finishing out 18 years of community leadership. And, as we spoke last time, it was really about, the transition from member of council, which is the district chief, into the Grand Chief role and what that meant for me. And so, as I look at the last 9 years as Grand Chief, there obviously was an opportunity to continue to be the Grand Chief or look at, some other options, whether it be, going off to another political system, or whether it be just into the community business sector, or what have you, right? And so I really do like the job that I do as the Grand Chief, and I enjoy speaking about our community, creating partnerships, taking on challenges, trying to find solutions, bringing partners to the community. But there comes a time when you have to make some decisions in your life, whether you're going to continue to do this or allow some, in this case, it's community leadership, new leadership to come in and continue to advance the community. I think that that has pondered in my mind, as well as my age as well, whether or not going to move into a different role now, or going to wait, right? And then there's no secret, as you get a bit older, it gets a little bit harder to transition into other things. Having thought about that, talking with my family, and then looking at the political landscape that exists in Ontario at the federal government, and which was the same decision I made in 2006 as running for my own community leadership, right? And then again in 2015, when looking at whether or not I should run for the Grand Chief, is kind of the state of the union of things, and is there a place for me to be able to help grow that, or to help maneuver the political dynamics, to help seize upon opportunities. And so with that, the Ontario Regional Chief election cycle is at the same time as ours, and they're 2 weeks apart, the elections itself. So if there was ever an opportunity to run for the regional chief position, I would not be able to run for the Grand Chief position. It's one or the other. The timing, it doesn't work. You can't you can't tell your electors you're committed to the job and then get another one 2 weeks before. So it was with that, talking with some of my provincial colleagues or members of other community leadership, chiefs through Ontario, and saying, look, I'm thinking about advancing, putting my name forward for the Ontario Regional Chief. And frankly, this was, several months ago that I've been thinking about this. And it wasn't, up until most recently that I made a decision and announced it to my community that I would not seek, re-election as Grand Chief, but I was going to seek, a nomination and look to be the next Ontario Regional Chief. And frankly, I'm very honored. The election happened last week in the Six Nations territory, and have been selected to be the Ontario Regional Chief for the next 3 years.
Well, congratulations again. Let's talk a little bit about that role and what it will entail.
Absolutely. So the role of the Ontario Regional Chief is, for one, the position is elected by the community leadership. So the chief of 133 communities have one vote in this process. And so, ultimately it's up to them how they want to embrace their councils or their community on this. But the position of Ontario Regional Chief is really the chief's chief. They represent the chief and council, not the community. The communities are represented by their chief and council. The elected leadership in every community represents the grassroots. The Ontario Regional Chief is an advocate for those community governments. So there's 133 in Ontario, and there is some political structures that exist. We call them PTOs, or political territorial organizations that exist in Ontario that also represent some of the same groups that feed into the Chiefs of Ontario. So this role is ultimately responsible to the Chiefs in Assembly, 133 of them, and takes direction from them through processes generally by resolutions or consensus on items, and really is responsible for advocating, lobbying for those communities collectively and this region. And it does feed in, the Ontario Regional Chief does feed into the Assembly of First Nations. So as the Ontario Regional Chief, I'll have a seat at the executive table for the Assembly of First Nations.
So you mentioned a lot of advocacy, a lot of lobbying, both at Queen's Park and of course Parliament Hill.
Yes.
As part of all this work. Let's talk about some of the issues that will be near and dear to your heart and the focus over the next 3 years.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, as we've previously discussed, relationship building is extremely important to me. And while there may be not an ask now, there could be an ask now. It really is about telling the story about who we are, right, and who the Chiefs of Ontario are with government. Governments do know at this point, but they may not know, specifically about certain regions or specific asks that are happening from different communities. And really, it is my role to make sure that we're making those connections, that we're, educating the decision makers, the policy makers, the bureaucrats about Ontario communities, but also about specific areas and regions, right, and the asks that happen. And so creating those relationships is important to me. I will continue to do that, not only with government, but also with, municipalities, with, townships, private partners, businesses, nonprofit. And so, creating opportunities, whether, it be in government or private sector, is important. And not every opportunity fits in different parts of this region appropriately, but other places it does. And so I'll be making sure that, I'm exploring all of those opportunities, but also making sure that, as we move forward, that Ontario is aware of our positions, that we have a better working relationship than we do now, as well as the federal government, right? And so this federal government, has a mandate as well, fortunately or unfortunately, has a timestamp, and we'll continue to work with them as much as possible in advancing our priorities in the region of Ontario. I can tell you that Ontario is a very diverse region for our members. We have communities, right from Akwesasne, which is most southerly, westerly, right up straight up to the very remote parts of Ontario, and the needs are great, right? And the needs are not the same as they are here in what we consider the south or the central of Ontario, are completely different than those in the north. And those challenges are great, but the opportunities are there, and it is my job to support finding solutions.
And you certainly touched on that diversity, and you talk about 133 communities. There's going to be some common concerns. There's going to be some common needs. There's going to be a lot of differing as well. At the same time, we've previously discussed the unique situation that is Akwesasne. There's no other community like it. The challenges there. Talk to me a little bit about how that experience with the MCA, how that experience with such a unique entity as the Mohawk Council of Akwesasne and the community of Akwesasne is going to help you in that new role.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is around jurisdiction. All of our communities in this region have jurisdiction over their governance, over their affairs, over their lands. Communities exercise them differently. Some communities push their jurisdiction and authority to the max, like the Mohawks of Akwesasne, like a number of other communities do. And it's my job to make sure that the federal government is respecting that jurisdiction that exists there. That's not only through the inherent jurisdiction we have under the Constitution, but also now recently recognized in the UNDRIP legislation. The United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People talks about jurisdiction in communities, self-government, and so these instruments support community actions, right? And we want to make sure that the government respects our autonomy as communities through this region. And so that is our position of Akwesasne, but also is the multi-jurisdictional. There are communities that do border the Winnipeg-Ontario border, not as complicated as it is here in Akwesasne, but also the different levels of provincial interference that exists as well in different areas for communities. The community community of Akwesasne has, pushed back in lots of areas where, outside entities are trying to, exercise jurisdiction or, control over certain areas. Not happening in Akwesasne. We'll make sure that, we're supporting other communities in navigating multi-jurisdictional, navigating jurisdictional issues, and making sure that their sovereignty is recognized.
And when we talk a little bit more about some of the key priorities, I know recently a lot of talk about the carbon tax and its impact on First Nations communities, as well as mining is a big topic right now in the more northerly communities. So just talk to us a little bit about some of those day one, some of those portfolios that you're going to be
absolutely focused on. So in the in the campaign period that we had and the dialogue sessions that we had, these were big priorities that I already knew going into it were the carbon charge is huge, right? And that two areas of that, communities feel that they're being a right is being violated by what unfortunately the federal courts classified as a charge on our people, but we still maintain it's a tax. It's and so in community being taxed is a violation of the understandings that we have with the Crown and the federal government. And the other big part of that is that our communities, unfortunately, a number of our communities were already challenged by, the cost of living. They were challenged by access, by reliance, and then to have to put this charge on top of it has created even a greater hardship. And so it's irresponsible of the federal government to think that this is acceptable. Now I know that many Ontarians, several other regions across this province are feeling the same with respect to this. But First Nation communities have been disadvantaged in lots of areas already, and now the federal government is putting this on there. There are communities in the north that rely on diesel generated power. Right, and so you're bringing in, hundreds and thousands of gallons of diesel fuel to power a big generator. They have no option, but this is, thousands of dollars being levied in this tax, which is unacceptable. That takes away from community programming. That makes it like this is not an option, right? And so, no consideration given for our people around that. The mining, well, there are communities that work closely with mining, and there's other communities that don't work closely with mining, right? And this is decisions of our communities to decide whether or not they participate or whether they don't participate. This is our lands. We have jurisdiction over it, and the provincial government needs to understand that. They've implemented some systems around that I think is very, problematic and is unfair, where, explorers go in on a computer system, they peg down these certain areas and, can then start getting permits from that. And there's zero consultation with our communities. It's not until after the fact that they've started rolling out and, possibly, doing some exploration that the consultation starts happening. This is unacceptable, right? And our communities want prosperity, but also communities want to ensure that their lands are protected as well. And so a cookie cutter approach around the diming aspect will not work for our communities, and it will not work for any of our communities. So frankly, in the north or south, it's predominantly in the north. And so this is an area that we'll continue to push forward on as well. The other one is a very controversial, is the Métis legislation, federal legislation that's recognizing, a group of people that frankly are getting rights that they don't have. They don't have any of those rights that our people have. Our people were the first people that were here. Our people, have a long historical relationship with the Crown, and frankly, the way it's been administered by certain groups in this region about the membership and things like that is improper. And then for the federal government to introduce legislation that legitimizes a group of people who basically say, okay, well, give us $10, you can have a membership, and then the federal government's prepared to codify that is not right. Especially when we have, a colonial piece of legislation known as the Indian Act, where we have people who are 100% from community, can't get recognized by Canada as being Indian because the legislation is so wonky, but yet you pay $10, another group is going to get it. And they give the federal government's moving towards giving them the same rights. And so our communities across Ontario have, staunchly rejected the legislation. We're lobbying hard to ensure that, that it's given better consideration. There are Métis in Ontario. There are legitimate Métis, and frankly, this legislation is insulting to not only the First Nations people, but also to the legitimate Métis that exist. Can't pay $10 to become part of a group and then have the federal government codify this stuff. It's not acceptable.
So certainly a lot of challenges, a lot of work ahead of you, but you mentioned opportunities as well, and I want to talk a little bit about that and what you're most excited about in the next 3 years.
Well, as I said in our previous interviews, I take great pride in talking about our community and talking about the opportunities that we have, the great things that are happening in our communities as well. And it's the same across this region. There's a lot of best practices happening. There's a lot of partnerships that are being formed. And as I move into my term as the Ontario Regional Chief, I'm going to get out there and learn more about these opportunities that exist. I know of many already, but I want to make sure that I'm seeing firsthand, hearing firsthand, so that when I come across opportunities, I can help navigate those two different regions within Ontario to be able to find community partners who fit what perhaps a private entity is looking for, to bring together also communities and communities, right? First Nation communities and First Nation communities, First Nation and non-Indigenous communities, to help bring prosperity to our people. I'm certain that we can create more relationships between partners. I'm certain that non-Indigenous and Indigenous communities are facing the same challenges, and that somebody to help bring them closer, or at least create those linkages, is one of the roles of the Ontario Regional Chief, and I look forward to that. But predominantly, getting out there, advocating and lobbying, meeting with the federal government, meeting with the provincial government, talking about who our communities are in this region, the opportunities that we have, the challenges that we have, is really what I look forward to. That is the role of the Ontario Regional Chief, is to be the lobbyist, the advocate, the person to open the door for the community leadership to come in and chat with the bureaucrats, the minister, members of parliament, members of provincial parliament, so that we're forging forward and making prosperity in our communities.
And I'm sure that ability to communicate, that spirit of collaboration, is going to top the list of my next question. But I do want to ask, because you're well known, obviously, in the region, both within the city of Cornwall, SDNG, and of course, Akwesasne. But for the rest of Ontario that are just getting to know their new regional chief, what does Abram Benedict bring to the table? What qualities do you have that you want to bring to this role?
Well, I've always said when I was the Grand Chief, that largest community with one of the most coolest dynamic Grand Chiefs. I'm not sure that that I'll continue to be that, but I do want to be that, right? I want to be the person that is prepared to go into situations that are difficult and to help find solutions. I want to be out there talking about this region that we represent as well. I want to be one that is going to find the balance between hardline approach of government and hardline approach of community. We both have values, shared values. It's a matter of finding the commonality for the betterment of our citizens, of our First Nation communities, and of citizens of whether it be Ontario or municipality or city. And so it really is making sure that I, as a representative of Ontario, of the Ontario First Nations, as the representative of the Chiefs of Ontario, is leading by example. The Chiefs of Ontario is an office that has a great workforce there. They have we work under a mandate from the Chiefs in Assembly, and I want to make sure that we are fulfilling every mandate that the Chiefs in Ontario have given us to do. And I want to continue to grow and bring more prosperity to this region. We are in difficult times. This is a difficult time for everybody, whether they be in First Nation or not First Nation, whether they be on reserve or off reserve. But it is about finding not only the solutions, but finding the opportunities and creating partnerships. Unfortunately, through all of our communities, we're struggling with homelessness. We're struggling with addictions, and so those same challenges that are faced, in cities are happening in First Nation communities, and we have to work together to ensure that our people are safe, are being served, and have the same opportunities that other Ontarians have.
And now let's picture 2027. We're sitting here in the same spot 3 years from now, looking back at your first term. What are you hoping to say you've accomplished, and what do things look like?
Well, I want people to know who the Chiefs of Ontario is, who the regional chief is, and why they exist, right? And so that is getting out there talking about that. But I also want people to know who their First Nation communities are closest to them, right? And I was recently at one of the organizations, Good Roads. was roads. And every person that I met there was, I asked, who's the nearest First Nation to you? And probably only half of them could tell me who they were, even if they were next door or within 100 kilometers radius. And we need to change that. We need to change that because those roads create opportunity. And as I move forward into my mandate, I want to create awareness. Awareness creates opportunities, and awareness brings about change. And I want to make sure that I'm doing my best to educate our communities about opportunities, but also educate non-Indigenous people about the challenges, the opportunities, and who the organization of the Chiefs Ontario is, and who the Ontario Regional Chief is, and what his responsibility is.
Wonderful. Well, a lot of work ahead, and but we know that you're certainly up to the task, and we congratulate you and wish you the best of luck in this new endeavor. And we certainly know that you'll remain a big part of the communities of Akwesasne, Cornwall, and SDNG, and we'll see you. So we wish you the best of luck. We look forward to seeing how the next 3 years unfold. And thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. I'll go for the opportunity to be here.